Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select Resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest this week is Patrick Kennedy. Patrick is a partner at Paradigm Electronic Solutions, and a little bit of background. He and his team at Paradigm consult on all aspects of eDiscovery, forensics, information governance, and information technology solutions. Patrick has held a variety of positions leading up to this, Director of eDiscovery at Andrew Myers, and before that at Chamberlain, and I'm not even, Patrick, going to try to pronounce the next name there, as well as an eDiscovery consultant at Kennedy Wade, with positions as well at Baker Botts and Sirius Solutions. Patrick also is a retired federal law enforcement officer and a decorated member of the U.S. Coast Guard. He's had a number of, been involved in a number of activities and gotten honors. He was, for example, founder of the Houston chapter of the Association of Litigation Support Paralegals, and the Coast Guard got 13 medals, including Special Operations Medal and Achievement Medal with Operational Distinguishing Device. I don't know what that means, but it sounds impressive. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start with an overview of Paradigm. What is this organization? What's its history? What do you do there?
Sure. I'm a partner at Paradigm. Paradigm has been around for roughly 15 years. We do everything from, everything on the EDRM and a little more, everything from information governance. We do preservation, collection, processing, and assist clients with productions and project management of, hosting a review platform and, managing a review. And we work with contract attorneys and the client, and then manage productions.
But to provide a little more context, what does your client base look like? I mean, demographics, that type of thing.
Sure. We focus on the construction market, but we have clients in all different aspects of the business cycle. Insurance companies. A little bit of government, pretty much in Houston. We have a focus on Atlanta, Houston, and the West Coast.
So I would gather from that probably a variety of sizes of corporations, again, primarily in the construction area.
Right. So we anywhere from 50,000 user company to, the mom and pops, the sole proprietors, everything in between. So we have. And
then working with law firms as well, I assume.
Correct. In-house corporate, legal, and law firms.
Okay. What? And you've been there. You haven't been there the whole 15 years. You're a relatively recent addition, no?
Right. So I've had a relationship with Tom Trammell and OJ Sandoval, my two business partners, for many years, and we've always talked about all getting together and blazing a trail in eDiscovery, and we just finally got together and started to do that. But OJ and Tom have been in business together for, like I said, 15 years, and have been doing quite well.
I'd like to turn to some of the things you have learned during your tenure in e-discovery, and in particular, what you've noticed about the law firms you've worked for, worked with, and worked against.
It's interesting that you say the law firms I worked against, because I actually have, done a lot of work for opposing counsel, believe it or not. You'd be surprised at the firms that need help with things like even Bates labeling documents. I've received productions in PST format before. And so my thought is, even though the attorneys are arguing over certain issues, I don't think the IT people have to fall into that, under that umbrella. And so I, you know, a production from an opposing side could easily go wrong, but the risk is minimal if you're the one doing the production. So I've helped with opposing counsel before doing productions. But the one thing I think that is common in the e-discovery world that's maybe missing from law firms is a well-rounded e-discovery person, whether you call it a head of e-discovery or a litigation support coordinator. I think it's really important to be the bridge between the client and the attorney on a matter. And one of the things that I did early on, that goes back to the early 2000s when I worked at Bigger Bots, was to, I was a litigation support manager. I didn't have the ability to bill my time. I was mostly managing project managers and lit support coordinators. However, I did apply for a employee ID where I could bill my time, and I spent a lot of my time on collecting documents. And what I learned was, when litigation's expected, the rules say that you need to preserve data. So I was able to get in with the client early on and conduct custodian interviews and learn all the intricacies of the company and the matter, and be able to pass that information back to the attorneys. You'd be surprised at, learning of a policy for a company, say an IT policy of where you store data. But when you do a custodian interview, 9 times out of 10, it's not what you think. You could, like, for example, we focus on the construction industry. A lot of times these construction projects are out in rural areas that don't have the best connectivity. And so when users can't store documents on a file share back at the mothership, a lot of times they find a path of least resistance to store their own data, such as Dropbox. So you'll have, you'll be conducting an interview and find out that someone has a personal Dropbox account. And then you find out that the rest of the team is using that Dropbox account with, some potentially responsive data. So it's interesting. But, I think it's important for a lit support person at a law firm to have, general IT knowledge, a little bit of networking, a little bit of database, experience with different applications that cover the whole OSI model, from, hosted platforms to ERP systems to text messages. There's a lot of information, as you know, on phones, but a lot of times those are not considered, in a case for whatever reason. I see that changing in a trend lately, but there's lots of information out there that's relevant. Different messaging platforms, ephemeral messaging platforms such as Snapchat. So, our data is not getting smaller; it's getting larger. The number of platforms and applications are growing exponentially. One indication of that is, 10 years ago, a mailbox size was anywhere from 5 to 8 gigs of data, and now they're 60 and 80 gigs of data. So
you mentioned at the beginning that you have probably more often than many found yourself in the unusual position of assisting the other side to get their discovery, their e-discovery in order. And from what I gathered, that's with some large and well-known firms as well as mid-sized and smaller firms. Let's not name names. We don't need to go there. But what do you see those firms? I mean, how is it that you end up helping them? Yes, I understand they don't necessarily have the personnel available or don't know they have the personnel, but there's a jump from that to actually being willing to take assistance from the other side. So how does that all come about? How does that come about?
I think it starts with, for one, I've been doing this for a long time. And so I've, nothing surprises me. I've come across every kind of situation, I think. So it's trust from the attorneys. So the legal teams have to trust that e-discovery person, to focus just on the technology when they're talking to an opposing counsel. And I think it's a function of, path of least resistance. I think when you speak to that opposing attorney and they find out that, usually there's a time crunch, right? And so when they add up, time crunch, the attorney might not necessarily understand the process. And, for larger firms, usually you end up in a queue. Not always, but, it's a lot easier to, when you have the person on the phone and they can do things over a GoToMeeting remotely and, make that person's life easier. It's just a, like I said, path of least resistance. And I would offer it. For me, the benefit is I get the data from the opposing side nice and clean the way I want it so that I can go home at the end of the day and not stay up, editing load files and that sort of thing. Selfishly motivated.
Well, but that's a strong motivation. None of us like to get that load file that doesn't actually load, or even worse, does load, but everything is a little bit off.
Right.
You've done a lot of work with construction litigation, and that presents its own special challenges with file types that are common there and not ones that get paid as much attention to in more general or litigation. How do you deal with all of that?
So usually the application will have a reader, and you can always get with a client. It's their data, and obviously they've got the application. These document review platforms out there have these third-party, viewers when, and their main function is to view, different file types, hundreds of different file types, but they don't catch everything. So, usually there's a viewer out there where you can use the native viewer to view those documents, that sort of thing. And when you process that data, a lot of times you can image that data and or OCR the data and then image the OCR and review it that way. So there's just many different ways. You have to play with it. You have to, figure it out.
When you're trying to work through that data, what sort of things do you want to be able to do with it? How do you work with it to add value from your client's point of view?
I think, again, the benefit to the e-discovery person to be involved in the collection, you can categorize that data. One way to, to make it easier for the attorney to review that data is by categorizing it, maybe from a specific division that you collected the data from, or a specific person or team, and keep track of that at the collection and as you bring it into the database. The other thing is, is there any, again, it's data driven. You kind of analyze the data and look for certain commonalities of, and ways to, again, make it easier for the attorneys to review it. It depends on the case. Sometimes the attorneys may not want to review tens of thousands of drawings, but maybe just a few. So it all depends. But also at Paradigm, we use third-party tools. Budgets at law firms are not always plentiful. And so, we use tools like Tableau, a visualization tool that, will help sort of tell a story. When you have a 2 million record database and you're looking at 2 million, rows of metadata in a grid view, it doesn't really tell you, a story. But when you visualize the data, it does. For example, I was working on a case. I was at the law firm working on a case opposing a very large law firm. You would assume with lots of resources, and the review team kept reporting that they felt like there was the other side had produced documents, and there's no really easy way to tell by looking at a 2 million rows of metadata. It's one of those things where you have to go look for a problem to find the problem. And so we used an export. We exported the .dot file of our productions and exported the .dot file of the opposing productions. Used Alteryx, which is a shaping tool, to shape the data and load into Tableau. And we created a line graph for the production. So you have your X and Y axis. We had, the number of documents and then the time frame. So from, January to, of a certain year to, and on for 5 years, overlaid that line graph on top of another one. So one production from our party was in a line graph, and then we overlaid the opposing party's production, and you can clearly see that they had underproduced.
You can see gaps in one area where the other was flush with documents.
Exactly. We had a contrasting color. Our line graph was in black. There was in orange, and with Tableau, you could. I'm not getting paid from Tableau, by the way, for this plug, but it's a great tool, and it provides an interactive visualization tool. So as you run your mouse along the line graph, it shows the X and Y axis points. So it'll show you, on this day, the opposing side produced this many documents. So when one line graph is higher than the other line graph, right away you can see that they underproduced.
So Tableau is a generalized tool.
Correct.
And it has a lot to offer. It's not optimized for discovery purposes. What types of capabilities do you look for in discovery tools?
The right tool for the right job. So I don't spend my day doing demos of software. I spend my day working with clients and solving problems. And so it just depends. It's driven by the data or the client or the situation. When a certain problem arises, I get the guys and we sit down and hash it out and, come up with a solution. And if that includes using a tool, then, that's what we'll do. And, the e-discovery world is, unique that I'll call competitors or phone in a lifeline, right? It's a great small community. Everybody knows each other, and different levels of expertise in different segments of the market, and so whatever works to get it done for the client, that's what it's all about.
Shifting gears a little bit, as you look to because you bring up that collaborative nature, as you look at what's happening with the e-discovery market, with what's going on at law firms, at providers, at corporations, where do you see things trending?
Well, I see, there's a lot of consolidation in the market. It seems like, spoiler alert, wherever Kim Taylor goes, Kim Taylor is going to, be part of some kind of acquisition. Shout out to Kim. There's a lot of consolidation in the market, and, I look at that as an opportunity to do business with clients who would like to, pick up the phone and call and have that service provider answer the phone, even if it's on a Friday at 5 o'clock.
Because we never get calls Friday at 5 p.m.
I tell you. So,
any particular issues that so going back to construction litigation, any particular issues or concerns that those who don't deal with it so frequently should have in mind when it comes to the discovery side of things?
I think I don't know if this answers your question, but I think but I'll take this opportunity to say this. The one thing that I think would be very useful in this market is, automation, of course, automation of software, but also making that software more intuitive and easier for an attorney who's never used a document review platform to use it. And the one thing that I like about Reveal is as soon as you process your data, you can click on analytics, one click, that's it. And it auto generates reports that show this person spoke to this person in email this many times on average, per week. And that's helpful information. And so I'm getting my information from, recently I did a criminal investigation, and so I used Reveal for that. And so the attorney and the client weren't really sure of the custodian list, and we all know that custodian list starts one way and then ends up a different way. It's always changing. And a lot of times, again, back to working with doing the collections, the IT person in the organization knows everything about the organization. And so they actually help a lot with in QCing that custodian list, just as a side note. But with Reveal, I found that, you could type in one of the custodian's names, and the concept engine in the AI portion of the tool will auto-generate other custodians that are similar in as far as their being part of the case. And it's not 100% accurate, but
That's right.
Say that again.
Similar communicators, right?
That's right. And so I could generate a list and offer it to the attorney and the client as, hey guys, let's start off with a custodian list that's already potentially complete. And it's especially for employment cases or investigations, it's very good to see right off the bat. There was a situation where we made the assumption that we were going to see X amount of communications between two parties, but once we loaded the data into the tool, we noticed there was a third person that we never even thought of. And that person had, a substantial amount of communications with the bad guy. So it's a good tool.
So let's close with this in the minutes remaining. Let's assume, this is my ideal e-discovery platform question. So what would your ideal e-discovery platform look like, assuming no constraints whatsoever, no financial limitations, no technical barriers, assume the laws of physics don't even apply, if that helps? What would you like to see?
More automation. I think, I think I tend to have kind of a different philosophy from other e-discovery folks. I think some folks get nervous when the products get more automated because they think that their job may be at risk, that job security may be at risk there, that they need to be able to drive these applications for the attorneys. I take the stance of trying to work myself out of a job. And that's always, proven to be, to pay back in spades. There's always something to do in the e-discovery world that attorneys and clients do not want to do. But I think more automation in the products and, ease of use for the attorneys. Reduce the click counts, make it more intuitive. And, with the advent of these AI algorithms is, do some work for the attorney. Kind of like what I was mentioning with these auto-generated reports. The reports, some of them aren't even relevant, but a lot of them are. And that's better than what you started with, which was, again, 2 million records in a database of, well, let me go look for problems and set up searches and see, what I can find. So it's just, it's all about time is money. And if the software can be more intuitive to reduce the time in training or reduce the time in, actually working in the database, I think that's, the way to go.
Great. Well, Patrick, thank you for joining us today. Patrick is a partner at Paradigm Electronic Solutions. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Thank you all for joining us today, and please tune in again next Friday. Patrick, thanks so very much.
Thank you, George.